the issues affecting Asia's animals and the stories of the people working on their behalf. We'll be taking you on a tour of what's been happening lately in the animal protection space around Asia and also bringing you updates from our huge network of animal protection organizations and our many working groups. Welcome to the Asia for Animals podcast.
Greetings everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the AFA Dog and Cat Coalition podcast. Today's topic delves into the concealed destiny of dogs trapped in the confines of puppy mills. Puppy mills often go unnoticed despite being a significant problem. The public is frequently deceived by the adorable puppies showcased in best stores, oblivious to the interesting backstory behind them. Today, we are honored to be joined by AB, the campaign coordinator from PETA Asia, who will shed light on the cruelty associated with these flourishing industries. The problem with puppy mill is not so well aware by the public, so can you please provide us an overview of PETA Asia dog mill investigation and its main objective?
Yes, so we investigated over 10 dog breeders in Vietnam, and we found cruelty at every single one of those locations. So our investigation found that at these facilities, dogs were kept indoors and they had little to no sunlight. They were kept in cages that were far too small for the dogs to move around in. The cages were full of urine and feces on the floor. And we had a veterinarian review this footage who explained that the wire floors of their cages can actually cause permanent damage to the dog's paws and nails, and severe injuries, pressure sores, skin ulcers. So we uncovered a lot of cruelty in our investigations, but despite what we found, the puppy mills that we visited in Vietnam are all actually legal puppy mills, and they operate legally and profitably. So we wanted to investigate legal puppy mills to show the public what is happening at approved and supposedly regulated facilities.
Thank you for the answer. That's so horrible to hear. I think there's many customers who buy dogs think that they are dog lover and they just don't know the truth behind the puppy mills.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes, from what I learned from PETA Asia website, you didn't just stop in Vietnam, and you also has like investigation in China, Indonesia, and Korea as well. So what are the common practice or condition found in all of the dog mills? Is there any difference?
Yeah, so in just over the past year or so, we've conducted 3 investigations, one in Indonesia, one in Vietnam, one in South Korea, but at all puppy mills across the world, so in the locations that we visited, but also in many other countries, the mother dogs, they are always bred over and over again until their bodies can't produce young anymore. Babies are always taken away from their mothers prematurely. And at puppy mills across the world, and at every single one we visited, dogs are generally deprived of socialization, exercise, proper veterinary care. And this can often lead to abnormal and self-destructive behaviors, which we saw during all of our different investigations. And while there may be minor differences in welfare regulations or laws in different places and countries, no matter where you visit these facilities, every single one of them exists purely to exploit animals for profit. So as long as these breeding operations are able to continue and intentionally bring more dogs into an already overpopulated world, the huge number of unwanted animals will continue. The only way to end this cycle of suffering is to stop breeding these animals. But we have no doubt that the suffering that we've documented in our investigations isn't occurring in puppy mills across the world. We would expect to see this type of suffering at all these facilities that exist just to exploit these animals for money.
Yep, it's so bad to hear about that. And it's horrible that the activity just legal. So when the investigator visited the puppy mills and when they review the materials, like what are the potential physical or psychology impacts on dog that is in place in the dog mills?
Yeah, so during our investigation in Vietnam, for example, the dogs that we recorded, they exhibited constant pacing, barking, jumping, and wall bouncing. And these are all examples of abnormal stereotypical behavior, which can be caused by frustration or anxiety, and a general failure to meet their physical and psychological needs. We also found the animals had a lot of physical problems. So dogs in our Vietnam investigation suffered from fungal infections, calcium deficiency, and lung problems. And they all cowered and froze when they were approached by the workers, which just shows us a poor psychological state, that they were living in fear and anxiety constantly. And it's also standard practice that the breeders and the staff working at these facilities don't have veterinary qualifications, but they cut the dogs' tails, for example. And in one of the facilities, the breeder that we spoke with admitted that she had given a dog to her daughter who kept beating the animal and broke the dog's leg. So again, these animals, they're treated like commodities and just used for profits, and they're not properly cared for. And we found similar issues in the other countries that we've conducted investigations of. Again, we believe that dogs suffer similarly at locations worldwide from both physical and psychological impact.
May I ask why the owners they cut off the dog tails?
So this can depend. I think some breeds, people prefer the animals to have shorter tails, in the same way that some breeds have their ears cut. But it could also be if the animals are kept together, perhaps to stop them from biting each other's tails.
That's so rude, or just for like the human consumptions in the human chains, like so prefer the shorter tails and the owner practice to please their customer.
Yeah, exactly. People want certain aesthetics. That's why people want certain breeds of dogs, and it's a terrible shame.
So do you know if they do like any methods to like debug the dogs?
And so this isn't something that we saw during any of our investigations. However, we do know that this procedure is unnecessary and inherently cruel, and it involves a very invasive surgical procedure and a great deal of post-operative pain and care. And really, barking is a dog's means of communication. It's the way that they communicate their feelings, and debarking a dog strips them of their natural ability to communicate and vocalize. It deprives them of their primary means of expression. So while this isn't something that we've seen in our puppy mill investigations, we do believe that this is unjustifiably cruel.
Can you tell me more about like how dogs are bred in perpetuate in dog fighting in Korea, and how is it related to the dog meat industries?
So during our investigation in South Korea, one of the puppy mills that we investigated, the facility's owner informed the PETA investigator that he doesn't just breed animals for the pet trade, for the industry of people, buying dogs and cats to have at their homes, but he also breeds them for dog fighting. And the owner also admitted to PETA investigators that when the dogs can no longer fight, they're then sold for meat and killed. But this really just shows that the dog breeders or the animal breeders, again, they're only concerned with profit, whether there's whatever industry they're selling these animals into, they're just doing it for the money. So of course they're going to be willing to sell these dogs to any industry that will pay for them, and unfortunately sometimes that's the dog fighting industry or the dog meat industry.
Yes, it's so cruel when we think of their activity or behaviors, because they raising dogs, but they prevent dogs to be adopted themselves. They don't have place to run. They don't have daily work, and they cannot even bark anymore because they begin to noises and.
It's awful.
And I also didn't know about the dog fighting in Korea before. Just know about it recently while reading on the PETA Asia website, and it's so horrible.
Yeah, and I think it's an other kind of underground industry in a lot of countries, like any different forms of animal fighting, like cockfighting. It's just another form of using animals for entertainment and for usually gambling purposes, and it's a very, very awful.
Yes. Yeah, it's all about money in the end for all these people, as long as they can get some profit from the war animals.
Exactly.
So, do you know how widespread is the issues of dog abuse in all of those countries like Korea, Indonesia, in Finland? It is popular, and what are the challenges in addressing those problems?
Yeah, so we believe that breeding facilities are a widespread problem on a global scale, and the demands and trends for specific breeds of dogs and cats has increased significantly in recent years, especially due to social media, and also access to purchasing these animals has become so much easier. So we're seeing increases of trends for certain animals and certain breeds. And as you mentioned, in Indonesia, you can now purchase animals on Tokopedia, which is an e-commerce platform. And from there, you can have them shipped to different parts of the country. So again, they're just, being bought and sold as commodities, as fashion accessories. In many countries, you can also easily buy them from social media pages. And the increased accessibility also just means that people may purchase animals on a whim, without a lot of pre-thought into the care that these animals require and into the commitment that it is to have an animal. So especially if you're seeing them for sale on social media pages and you see an animal that looks very cute, and you decide to purchase an animal on just the spur of the moment without realizing the huge commitment that could be 10, 15 years commitment to owning a dog, and the financial commitment as well. And this is why we're then seeing so many animals dumped on the street, because people don't think about the responsibility that it takes to care for an animal. And the breeding industry just really sees these animals as merchandise to sell for profit. And pet stores like As Pet in Vietnam, they treat puppies as if they're fashion accessories. They sell them to anyone without any background checks. And again, there's, no guarantees that the people that purchase those animals will be able to care for them correctly or for the long term.
Yeah, it seems like the customer in the public, like people who buy dogs, are also blamed for all of this. Because like the dog news in the dog store, they just are promoting and advertising some certain breed on social media and make it becomes like a fashion trend and
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and people just don't realize the commitment and responsibility that it takes. They're not just fashion accessory to have in your photos and videos. It's a lifelong commitment for that animal's life.
Yeah, and it's horrible to think that some of them would cut off the dog tails or ear just for some mere fashion trend.
Yeah, just because they believe that will look better. It's crazy.
So, can you tell me more like about the methods that they use to breed the puppies? So, like how the breeder would handle the puppy once they are born.
Yeah, so at puppy mills, the dogs are typically held down and forced to breed. So at a facility in Indonesia, the investigator watched two breeders immobilize a female pug, so hold this female pug and ensure that she couldn't move away. And then they guided a male pug on top of her and held them together and forced them to mate. And then we would typically see mothers and puppies separated far too early. So to meet the demand for purchasing very young puppies, people want the youngest puppy and the cutest puppy, and they believe that the smaller the puppy is, therefore the cuter they will be. So these dogs are taken away from their mums far, far too early, just so people can buy a very young dog. And so often puppies younger than 6 weeks will be torn apart from their mothers. And this can also lead to greater risk of illness and social and behavioral problems, compromised immune system, and they can have psychological distress and anxiety because they're missing out on that really important time with their mother that nature requires for many different things. And the puppies, they're still learning critical skills at that time from their mothers, and they're not ready to be weaned from their mother's milk and their mother's nourishment. So it's just really important for their health and well-being to spend that critical time with their mother, but that's often taken away from them just so we can buy the youngest and smallest puppies.
Yeah, yes, that's so messed up, to be honest. And do you know like what will happen to the puppies if they are unwell at birth, or if they don't have like the structures or like the fur or something that the customer prefers?
You mean if
they don't look cute or like they have sickness or something, like the puppies if they are born unwell, something like that?
Yeah, so likely those animals wouldn't be able to be sold, and perhaps they could end up back in the breeding mill to be bred themselves, or they could possibly end up at live markets or sold into other industries. Again, the breeders will be looking to make money from these animals any way they can. So I'm sure they'd be willing to sell them to any industry that would give them a bit of money for them. But yeah, it's very worrying to consider what does happen to these puppies that can't be sold, because of course they're breeding so many on such a regular basis. It would be surprising to to think that all those animals could be sold into loving homes. I'm sure there's a large number that suffer worse fates.
Yeah. If the models they need to keep redu- reducing like this, so what are their fates if they cannot do that anymore? If they cannot be used for breeding?
Yeah, so this is something we looked into in our investigation in Vietnam, and breeders told our investigators that the dogs are impregnated twice a year for 5 or 6 years. So they would have 2 litters of puppies for 5 or 6 years. And then when their bodies wear out or they can no longer produce as many puppies, then they either reduce the number of litters that she has a year to just 1, or they can be sold on Facebook or at live animal markets. So again, as we just discussed, I'm sure at this point they would then, be willing to sell these poor animals these poor mother dogs who have already probably given 10 litters of puppies. At this point, had her babies taken away from her 10 different times, and then just to be sold at a live animal market where they're crammed into cages, and yeah, it's very worrying to then consider who they're sold to and for what purpose.
Yes, I agree. And they do that legally, like this. So, are there like any laws or regulation is the countries to like preventing the dog use, and just how effective those laws?
Yeah, so legislation is often very weak. So every single puppy mill that we investigated in Korea, Indonesia, and Vietnam all operated legally. Several of the facilities in Vietnam are approved by the Vietnam Kennel Association. One puppy mill owner that we visited in Korea even boasted that his business had been praised by the government as an exemplary breeder. So, claims of animal welfare certifications or regulations are really just meaningless when we can see that any laws and regulations are rarely upheld, because we've filed complaints with the authorities about the cruel conditions of all the puppy mills that we visited. But, no action has been taken. And in Vietnam, we've called on the government to investigate these puppy mills, and we believe our footage shows violations of multiple laws. But unfortunately, these facilities continue to operate legally. So yeah, even when the regulations are there, they're rarely implemented or upheld, and sanctions are rarely given for offenders of these regulations.
Yes. Yes, it's so sad to hear about that. Like like sometimes the law is there, but it's not effective or useful in any ways, and the dog and like the animals keep being the victim for human consumption.
Yeah, it's shocking.
So in Korea, I heard that you like PETA Asia happened to like rescue a dog, and her name is Balang. Balang is I pronounce it correctly, and that's such a family story. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so it'd be great to share some positive news on on this investigation. So during our investigation in Korea, a PETA investigator came across a little dog who appeared to be blind, possibly, we believe, due to inbreeding or perhaps prolonged untreated illness, because she was, in filthy living conditions. And when the investigator found her, she was spinning in endless circles. She was scared and confused, in a very noisy kennel surrounded by barking dogs, and it was obvious that she couldn't be left in those conditions. So she was rushed to a vet who confirmed that she wasn't able to see or bark. She was blind. And yeah, she's now since been named Pa Lang. She's been adopted into a new loving environment. Her circling behavior has diminished and her fear of the outdoors has reduced, and she now loves going for walks and playing with other dogs that she meets at the park. And I think this story just shows that adopting companion animals, no matter what background they've come from and what they've suffered, they're all in desperate need for a home. And seeing the videos of her in the puppy mill, and then later on the videos of her now that she's in a loving environment, and seeing the change in her, that we'd really like to urge those that are able to care for a dog in their home to consider helping an animal, a dog like Pa Lang, instead of enriching the greedy and cruel breeders who produce puppies for profit.
Yeah, that's such a lovely story, and I always think that's so amazing that the dogs like Pa Lang, like they used to be treated horribly by humans, but once they get a chance to be a dog again, they become friendly, and they just so friendly and so nice to both humans. Like despite the experience, like they just forgiving.
Yeah, I mean, all animals are, just desperate for a safe and loving home, and it's really great when we see people give dogs or cats from shelters that opportunity to know a loving home when they've suffered so much, rather than just purchasing an animal and adding to the problem of the overpopulation.
Yes. So yes, I agree. The dog in cat overpopulation is just like a problem like everywhere, like around the world. And yes, and adoption is just the best solution. Is the most human solution as well, I think.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So as we are wrapping up our conversation, like do you have like anything to tell the audience, like how can individuals in like community can contribute to the fight against dog abuse and global responsible adoptions?
Yeah, so we just want to remind people that most animals that are sold in stores, so most of the animals that you will see in a pet store, they come from mass breeding facilities, just like those that we've investigated. So we really urge the public, and we urge your listeners to never buy from a breeder or pet shop, but rather we encourage prospective dog and cat guardians to visit a local shelter, because as long as people keep buying animals from shops, breeders will continue to breed these animals, and more unwanted healthy animals in crowded shelters will continue to be euthanized. So really the best thing that people can do is adopt a companion dog from a shelter, and help those dogs like Pa Lang who are desperate for a home. And also any of your listeners that do already have animal companions, we really urge you to have your animals spayed or neutered, to prevent unwanted births, and not to continue to add to the overpopulation crisis.
Yes, just please adopt themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's really the answer. Is to adopt animals and to ensure that they're neutered and spayed, so that we can start to reduce numbers of animals in shelters rather than continuing to add to the problem.
Yeah, and every time we want to buy any dog on the social media, just please do the research and see, because the investigation is published on the internet. So just check to see the cruelty behind and choose adoption over buying and making money from animals.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again for joining our podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for bringing light to this important issue. And people having dogs and cats is such a common thing in today's world. So this is really such an important issue, because it's something that affects so many people, and most people I know have a cat or a dog in their home. So it's such a it's such a widespread issue that affects just your average person, really. So it's really important to just get people to consider where these animals come from and how they can help an animal rather than be part of a bigger problem.
Yes, I totally agree. It's just a serious issue, and not so many people know what this or know what behind or inside the opinions. So thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. You can find everything you need to know about our work and connect with us at asiaforanimals.com. Tune in for the next episode. Asia for Animals Coalition, a united voice for Asia's animals.